Welcome to the Town of Richmond meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission, November the 20th, 2023. Are there any additions, deletions, or modifications? Welcome to public comment. Yeah, that's your public comment. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Public comment. Any public comments before we get moving?
Morgan, I don't know if anybody has noticed, but it is cold outside.
Well noted. Any other public comments? Nope. So additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda tonight? Okay. Moving ahead, if we want to approve the minutes from November the 6th, 2023, and anybody want to make a motion?
Okay. I move we approve the minute from what day?
November the 6th.
November the 6th.
This is David. I'll second.
Discussion. No discussions, so no discussions. As for a vote on the minutes to approve the minutes from November 6th, 2023. All in favor?
Bard, aye.
David, I.
Aaron, I.
Say aye.
All opposed, none opposed. Morgan abstained since he wasn't here. Motion passed. Next is need Josh here for we have one invoice to approve, is it? Or not invoice? Purchase order, is it? And we have a warrant.
I move to approve the warrants.
Getting that.
Yeah, I'm second on approving the warrants.
Okay, straight warrants for amount of $19,578.24. Discussion, all in favor to motion to approve the warrant number 22058 for $19,578.24. All in favor?
Bard, aye.
David, I.
Aaron, I.
Second.
Morgan, aye. Motion passes. We have.
Yeah, I should have.
This is, do we have to do the Endine invoice or no?
I thought there was a, yeah.
I don't think there's any purchase orders.
No purchase order. I think there was an invoice and I don't know why I don't have this.
It's this one right here, if you want to read the number off the top.
That's just
But that's done on.
an invoice.
Okay, that's all there was.
Was it separate for some reason?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, no, it's with all the other ones.
Okay. I was gonna say, I don't think there
We're
was any, no, there were no POs and invoices were all just tied to the warrant, so it should be good.
Okay. It's really strange. Something just took my computer over.
Next time I take the sewer extension with the outside permission line.
And this is really strange.
All everything.
Okay.
In the agenda.
Be able to just bring up my. Okay. That is really strange. So, first item is update on the Gateway Sewer expansion, including update from the Richmond Land Trust. So I don't know. Thank you. First, we're have been pursuing expansion of the sewer system or sewer line out the Gateway for a number of years, and it was last week we received a letter from the Richmond Land Trust on the easement between the school and the Willis Farm property. So any discussion first? Bard?
Morgan, I think, we received the letter from the Land Trust shortly before our last meeting. I think it was an hour or two before that meeting. And so this is sort of a continuation from that agenda item in our last meeting with the intent of both notifying property owners in the Gateway that the letter existed and inviting people to comment on it tonight. So we heard a short overview about the letter.
I would also mention that, did you get the letter from Linda that came about 5 o'clock?
We might, yeah, that's a good point. Sorry to have to be so conversational. We might introduce the topic like for public comment. We did get an email with public comments on the letter.
Right. We got an email from Linda Perrin, who's our town clerk, but also one of the property owners, saying that the letter apprising them of all this stuff that was mentioned was mailed on the 13th and came today. So she, and
Yeah, sorry, we didn't get it out super fast. We tried to get it out as quick as we could. Obviously, it was a little later. So yeah, I think people got notified a bit later than we would have liked. So apologies for that.
that they don't.
Correct, yeah. So, I mean, this probably won't be the last time we discuss the letter though, so.
She also had some substantive comments. I don't know if you have it in front of you that we
I can
could,
pull it up.
maybe the highlights.
I can call it one.
I have it up if you want.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I'm guessing there may be people here who are interested in.
Recording in progress.
Linda's point, says the project will make it necessary for all users to pay the price of the extension to a private development, i.e. the Reeves. I've always been of the belief that a developer wishes to extend the system, they are responsible for the cost. Many years ago, my family who lived at the current 434 West Main Street was asked to be attached to the water line as it's part of the village, only to be told that my father would have to pay the entire cost of the project. A project that did not include a supply line large enough for proper water service. The lines will be 6 inches. I don't believe that's big enough. It seems to put undue burden on the landowners along the gateway, taking the 30-foot right-of-way for both the water sewer lines and requiring them to allow the greenbelt and walking biking path. This seems to place unfair issue on those property owners, as that info will have to be included in their deeds. I think that's the key part.
That's public comment. Any other comments from the board or maybe?
Maybe after the public comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
If any of you would like to speak, you're welcome to come up.
Yeah, just because we have a microphone here, so it's easier in recording to be heard. Thank you.
Okay.
And if you could just say who you are before you speak, so we can have it for the minutes.
Yep, I am Nicholas Graff. So we are, I guess what you would have called the Verberg Farm parcel.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I guess it's not really a Verberg Farm anymore. It's DeGraff. And we were just as far as like talking about the farm, like you talk about the homestead, is the homestead only including just the 3 houses are on that road? Or is it also including the farm? Because so currently it's all one system based on wells. And so like, you know, like the cows, like that's a huge draw of water, you know, thousands of gallons a day. And like, let's talk about like the 6-inch line, like as far as I don't know if that would meet the needs to us that far, let alone everybody else that is attached to that line, I guess. And then, yeah, the 30-foot easement, like as far as like the whole for the sewer and water line, I think that's fine, but I think to try to encroach the green beltway as part of it is kind of like it's kind of not the scope of the reason of that right of way. Like that right of way is meant for the sewer and water, not try to, you know, and try to tack that on and not give people a choice as far as if they want that the green beltway potential to go through their land. Like, oh, you want this? Well, you can't have it unless you are willing to give us that 30-foot right away for the sewer and water. It's kind of getting blackmailed into the, if you need the water, you kind of like, you're forced to your hand. You don't really have a choice. So I guess that's, you know, we would have potential interest, you know, if it went through and if we had a need, we would be interested in potentially hooking up to it if it became a need for us.
But it would be a struggle to give up the land for that big of a right of way. I shouldn't use the word struggle, but it's a big ask.
Yeah, it's, you know, for like water and sewer, I mean, you're talking a huge chunk of this comes down our cropland that is needed for us to maintain our business, and to ask for 30 feet to put a bike path on it, like that's, you're talking acreage, you're talking tonnage, you're talking huge value of loss of income to the farm because of that want for that green beltway or whatever.
Okay. Yep.
So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, anyone else?
So I did too receive Heidi Borman. I did too receive this letter. Peter and I own a property
on 282, 284 West Main Street. And I'm looking at this and I was like, okay, reading it. Now, I know for a fact the mobile station has no intentions of doing water and sewer because they are already in the process with the state. So I see their names on here and I'm like, okay, let's cross them off. The other one was the mobile home park. Talked to Peter Brown. I don't know if some of you that are new might not have received this letter, but I did send it out to the commission and also the select board. When I spoke to Peter a few years ago, he has no intentions of expanding. They've already done their municipality right there on site. So I think we need to nix them off. So then we're down to a few group of people that this is all going to fall under. And with that expense, knowing how much that costs to do pump stations, and I keep hearing figures of $8,000, that is not correct. You're talking between probably $30,000 to $50,000 per homeowner. In realistic, with engineering fees, with construction, so it's just because it goes by your house, my understanding with the commission, you have to hook on. Is that correct or not?
It is correct.
It is correct.
However, and the last time we did an expansion, we were pretty generous with how many years you had. Some people, like 8 years after, still haven't quite on right.
Yeah, I think it was something like that, yeah.
Okay, I mean, I was looking at figures that came across my desk when we first discussed it, and Peter and our property was $230,000.
Mhm.
So I just think people need to be aware of this is not an $8,000 going by your house and you're good to go.
Now, what you're referencing is the big reason why we realized the original, there was no way people could afford it.
They can't afford it. This is not cost effective. And I will have to say, as a property owner who owns multiple properties in Richmond, it is up to a developer like myself and Peter to pay for this on their own. I read this letter. I appreciate the people, sending this out to us. But when I read this, the one thing that hit me was hardly anyone this actually is going to hit other than the developer in phase one, which is the Reeves. So there is no way this will ever be fruition. And forward thinking, I look at this and I go, you can say this, but the chances, I would be better off buying a lottery ticket to have all of these going through. So my personal opinion on this, I realize they've spent a lot of time on this, close to 10 years since 2014. As a developer, it is really up to the developer to be paying for this and not to be asking anyone on water or sewer or in the gateway to be expanding upon this. So thank you.
Question for Heidi?
No,
Sorry.
sorry. I thought the intent of the letter was to work out a easement through the Willie's property and not, we're not expanding. The Reeves are looking to come through. They're not asking for money. They're looking for putting the line through to their property right now. The land trust came back with this letter because it's my understanding that the town needs to take over the pipeline through their property after the Reeves basically put it in. And we all had a lot of questions last week for them on pipe size. And it seemed that he was pretty understanding that once we get engineering involved, that there would be some specifics in the letter change. Was that not what I understood?
By he, you mean Jeremy Hoff, right?
Yes,
From the Land Trust.
correct.
So Maureen, we're using pronouns somewhat flexibly.
Yeah.
So what we're responding to and what you're responding to, Heidi, here is a letter from the land trust,
Right.
just to be clear, people.
And
So
I,
they're writing something to us. We're not writing it to them.
to them, the question I would have is with the developer, and I appreciate you saying that, Bard, and making that clarification. I understand, and I'm hoping the land trust is aware of, this is still how I feel. Is the developer that they've been working with for the last 10 years, when I see a 6-inch pipe and being through this, where are the engineer and the preliminary proposals for this property? Everyone else in town, including myself, have had to have preliminary engineering and a scope plan of exactly what your plans are before we invest anything. So I would ask for that too from the commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional public comment?
Hi, I'm Gary Bresser. I'm here because Jeremy couldn't make it tonight. So I'm here to answer questions, but also to clarify a couple of points. So the question of the pipe size, I think the 6-inch was put in there because that was the largest number we had heard for a sewer pipe, but we're not tied to any pipe size.
So the 6-inch would refer to the water line, wouldn't it?
I thought
that was.
we were referring to the sewer line.
And last week it was mentioned that we thought it needed to be an 8-inch line for water in order to support fire hydrant.
Yeah, the hydrant.
So that would have to get amended.
So the 6-inch is the maximum.
But I'm saying that we took that number because we thought that was the largest sewer line that anybody had been talking about. It's not because we are locked to any kind of pipe size.
Okay.
The letter, section C, clearly says the sewer and water lines will have a maximum diameter of 6-inch. Which was a red flag last week because we had informally assumed that for hydrants, we would need an 8-inch, but again, we got the letter just before the meeting, so there were a lot of unknowns, but that was a question we had asked.
Our board hasn't met since the letter was sent to you, so a number of us have talked and said that don't get hung up on pipe size.
Okay.
For water or sewer. That's not an issue.
Okay.
Another thing I wanted to be clear about was that the path and the water and sewer line, as we have envisioned in that letter, would all be on the reap side of the road down through the gateway. It wouldn't have any effect on the farm across the road.
You're talking about the 30-foot green belt?
Yeah, 30-foot green belt.
That'd be on the north side of,
No, would not have a,
so that's specifically the north side of Route 2.
yeah.
Do you have a vision of where it would cross to access for Verberg's
Well,
with the
the
train?
letter
tracks and stuff?
talks about that it would be available for the Verberg homestead, and I think by that, Jeremy, when he wrote it, was envisioning anything that was happening up around the farm, that all that elevated area. The residences, the farm and everything.
But I guess my question was there a vision of where they would be able to hook on to the system?
I would think it
Or
would,
is that up to them?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. You have a question or? Go ahead.
So one of the things that we've wrestled with, as those of you who have followed the Route 2 repaving, et cetera, project over recent years. And then the pinch point conversation we had at select board meeting 2 weeks ago suggested that the cost of achieving 5-foot shoulder widths between the mobile station and the village, was it $5 million, $6 million?
In that ballpark, yeah.
Like, it's a ballpark, but that's a big ballpark. figure, like real money. So one of the questions is, if there were such a path, how could it feasibly connect to the village? And so, similar to the water sewage line discussion, what about running a path up through the conserved land to connect the school to the gateway? That seems to be the only economically feasible way of connecting to the path, to the village. That's something RLT would entertain?
Well, we certainly entertain it. The last we had heard from the school is that they don't want public access during school hours. That they want to be able to control that area. Because it would be running right next to the school buildings and
Yeah, so that, it just strikes me, we're kind of stuck, like connecting a walking path through 5-foot shoulders only is in the neighborhood of $5 million, and to do an additional path adds additional millions of dollars. So I think I've heard the conversation. It's like, oh, we'll deal with that question later. Is that sort of where we are, how that path would connect to the village itself?
well, I think this letter is focused on about the quarter of the length of the path that runs from the beginning of the Reap Farm to the Great Escape.
Okay.
And what we would envision is that it would bypass at least some of those pinch point areas, you know, and it would use the setback area and zoning of those areas. Those, I think it's about 8 lots, and it would put a path through that 30-foot area, water on one side, sewer on the other of the path. Would have the advantage of installation costs would be way less because you wouldn't be digging in the Route 2 right away. It would, any maintenance could be done outside of the Route 2 right away. Just bring equipment in if you have to redig a line. There's nothing in our letter suggests that we're asking people to give this land, or even give it an easement on the land. Personally, and speaking for myself, creation of this 30-foot lineal parkway is a good use, would be a good use of conservation funds, which would go to the owners, which would then, if they chose to, would buy down what they would have to pay to tie into that line. So in exchange for giving up the setback area that they essentially can't use under zoning, they would get a path that would connect customers or users right along their property. They would get paid for it, and they would increase the likelihood that the water and sewer could get down through there. The other thing is that our letter is not intending to push water and sewer to the mobile station, the mobile home park, or anywhere else. We're just saying that if we want to rewrite the easement to the town, that now goes just to the Reaps, even if we want to include it so that it may be 50 years before the town wants to tie into the mobile home park, but they would have the legal right to do so without coming back to the land trust and go through this process again.
I have been.
Well, I do have a question on that, with the payback, because I know you came to also the cemetery commissioners meeting on that board, but also having property in the gateway. And the discussion was how much you would be paying us to have that 30-foot buffer, on my property. And I can say that we just got reappraised, here in Richmond, and the amount of what the property values are. I think it was for a quarter of an acre and taxed at $179,000 just for a quarter of an acre. So it's going to be pretty expensive when you have to pay me off. Thank you.
Well, the appraisal, it would be subject to appraisal. I don't think my guess is an appraisal on setback area that you can't use under zoning is not gonna be worth the same square foot cost as the land that you farther back that you can use under zoning, but that'd be up to an appraiser, not my guesswork.
Aaron?
I guess I have some other questions about the path. And I maybe have been behind on the information that it was even happening, I guess, a little bit. So I do have other questions on the path, but I guess I feel like my opinion of this whole conversation is a little bit that it seems like we're putting the cart before the horse. If the REAPs don't have something to show us that says, this is what we want to do, this is what we might need for service, it seems like we're putting the cart before the horse to even amend the easement without knowing what their intentions are. And I know, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago, Ashley and I were looking at possibly doing some storage units at the farm. And the first thing that we did before we even came to talk about it with the zoning people was we went to an engineer and we said, what do we need to do? What do we need for water lines? What do, and that was an upfront cost that we had to get, was those engineering drawings, so we could see what was feasible, how much it was going to cost. And it feels a little bit like if the REAPs really are interested in us, both your committee and our committee, pursuing this, maybe they need to bring us something concrete and say, this is what we'd like to do. Because I've been on this board for less than a year, and I'd say half the time we've been talking about what they might want to do. So I guess my 2 cents is, I appreciate that your board has put time in, but I don't feel comfortable, I guess, saying, yes, we like your new easement without knowing what they want to do. And the path is definitely a factor. And it seems like if that keeps moving forward, then we need to keep talking about it. But that seems maybe like a different conversation that's happening in a different commission or board's meeting.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, my name's Chris Perrin and I own some land up 1012, and we have a duplex, and my neighbor Mike, and our plan is to build some housing there eventually if we could ever get that water and sewer through, because we can't do anything now. And we've been talking about this since the 80s when I moved in, for crying out loud. So, but you take that 30 feet and then the setback to build is another, 25 or something, another 55 feet of land that we can't use. So I'm just wondering, throwing that out there.
I'm gonna throw a sort of fork in the road, so to speak here. So first, a comment that this is sort of complicated because some of the things we're talking about are not actually even in the purview of the Water Sewer Commission. Water Sewer Commission doesn't have authority to negotiate pathways and stuff. Our role is really simple and straightforward about the water sewer. So this then goes to the select board and other groups for planning, zoning, et cetera, which is not impossible, but a little more complicated, of course. So the REAPs, I talk to them occasionally just because as years go by, you want to like, hey, what's the latest? So here's what I know from the REAPs as of this week, that they either have or will submit plans for storage units on the back part of their property, and they're focused on that in the near term. And in the medium term, intend to then turn to housing on the front end. They are still contemplating, they're interested in continued conversations because for them, it's a business model, right? What can they build and would they build with on-site water and sewer? And what would they build with public water sewer coming down the hill? In that regard, the current easement allows for water and sewer going to phase 1 without restriction. So what I'm inclined to suggest is we continue conversations with the REAPs about phase 1 under the current easement. If they're interested, we could put water and sewer lines to serve phase 1. We've discussed this numerous times in the past, that would be installed at a scale that could serve additional properties further down the road. The advantage is we have a customer who's interested has a financial plan that may allow the water sewer lines to be built. And we have the legal authority under the current easement to build those water and sewer lines, including one of the things we say we gotta have is a fire hydrant down there, which helps the fire department and has the potential of impacting property insurance costs in the gateway as well. Because if you're closer to a fire hydrant, your property insurance for fire protection should go down. So,
Depending on the size, though, it may be required as well.
I'm sorry.
Depending on the size of what they do, they may be required as well to do a fire hydrant.
Yeah, it could be, and sprinklers, it's really difficult to do sprinklers if you don't have a high pressure public line, not impossible.
Size.
But way easier if you have it coming down off the hill. That's something you could contemplate is putting sprinklers in, especially in new construction. So I think that's our near-term path forward. And if we got water and sewer in partnership with the reefs, I say partnership because what we have in play for town money is $147,000 more or less of Northern Regional Borders Commission grant funds. They gave it specifically to extend water sewer to the reef property. So it's taxpayer funds because it comes from the federal government, but it's not Richmond water sewer user funds, nor is it Richmond property tax funds that would pay for that. So the proposal or supposal to the reefs is that's what we have in play is about $147,000. Can you make this work for your property and you do the rest of it under the current easement? And then we could take it over as a public line once it's built. And that would mean any discussions of extension beyond the reefs would take place on another day in a phase 2 or 3 conversation. But
I'd like to just try to respond to Chris's point. So 30-foot right away, the property itself isn't transferred. The landowner would still own it. So you would still meet the 30-foot setback requirement under zoning. There isn't an additional setback. So it wouldn't change what you could build on your property.
That's what I wanted to add, an additional.
Right.
Gary, could you clarify why 30 feet?
Well, 2 reasons. 30 feet is what the gateway setback zoning is. So it's kind of a natural cutoff point. But also, if you design this lineal parkway, and you have, there's isolation distances between water and sewer lines. And I wouldn't want to put them right under a paved rec path where if you have a leak, you have to dig them up. So you'd want them far enough out that you could maintain the lines without destroying the path. So that gets you out of ways and it gives you a little bit of room that the path doesn't have to be totally just, Route 2 straight. But it would, I think by the time you got those isolation distances and what an excavator needs to dig without destroying the path, you're pretty much up to 30 feet. So that was just why we picked that.
Heidi?
I just have a question with the grant, the $147,000. Is there any stipulation? Because if they are planning on doing self-storage, I mean, my understanding of self-storage, there's hardly any water and sewer to use.
I think we'll build self-storage. And then if we're gonna build housing, we'll talk about a sewer.
I'm just curious if there is a stipulation in that grant that you have to promote water and sewer.
I believe that when Joy was at the meeting with us some period of time ago, she said that they could do the storage units without having to have water and sewer. That's like within their scope. So the storage unit project wouldn't trigger the grant
Right.
being used or
Grant wouldn't get-
activated.
Grant wouldn't be triggered until we know that it's a public one.
Is there a timeline on the grant as far as like water and sewer have to use it?
I believe
The grant does have a shelf life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've gotten 2 extensions.
So
At some point,
we met with them at the Northern Regional Borders Commission staff. And they are reluctant to take back the money having awarded the money, they would like to see the money used for its intended purpose, so they extend it. They won't do it forever, like we won't be here 50 years from now talking about the grant.
Yeah.
But at least to date, they've shown flexibility.
Gary, I think part of the confusion on the path, paragraph H says, path to be owned by the town of Richmond. So if I were a landowner granting use of a path to be owned by the town of Richmond, I would take that to mean that we don't own it.
Well, it was intended as an easement, but the town would own the actual path, not the land under it.
Well, still, it would be under the Fifth Amendment. It would be a public taking. There would have.
No, it wouldn't be.
We'd have an easement. We're taking somebody's land and saying you can't use it for this purpose. We're gonna use it for a path. That is a taking under the Fifth Amendment, but it has to be, yes, it is.
No, it really isn't, Jay.
We're gonna get an easement, yeah.
Okay, but when you tell, if somebody doesn't grant you the easement, somebody doesn't want to come across their path, and you say we're taking it anyway, at that point, you're taking private land for public purpose.
But there's no suggestion that anybody's land is being taken.
Okay.
They have to agree to it.
And so if people don't all agree, you've got this path with section.
I'll answer it right now. I'm not agreeing.
So Morgan, this is sort of why I suggest the fork in the road.
Yeah, it's probably time.
That I think there is a possible path forward for phase one.
Plan.
And then once we get to phase one and it's engineered to support extensions further, then it's a different conversation in terms of what would it take for an ended easement and what would it take for financial support. And I'll just remind people, the reason we have always gotten stuck on this project, there seems to be a fairly universal agreement that it's a good thing to have water and sewer into the gateway. There is no agreement on who's going to pay for it.
And how?
It's actual money. It's real money when you're talking millions of dollars. And so the way we're sort of painted into a corner is the current users don't want to pay for it. Our ordinance says an extension has to be paid for the people who will be served by the extension. And that's why we just keep doing this sort of merry-go-round. We are stuck. So from having talked intermittently about this issue for years, I think it seems to me the only like potentially viable near-term approach is a phase one water and sewer line to the reefs, engineered to go further and deal with the extension after phase one is in place.
1945. I mean, 2045. Started in 1945.
Steve.
Sounds like a
Well,
long time.
Let's not also forget the school section,
Right, that's part of it.
Not forgotten,
which we have not even
nailed down.
talked to them about. I mean, we're not gonna hook the reefs onto that and take over that without a more concrete answer on what problems we would be incurring.
So that might be a topic for a future meeting. I know we're not surprisingly took up a lot of time. Do we want to do the next phase of inspection of the school line? Because the last one, having talked to the engineer or the person who did the test, it is at best inconclusive. So it didn't pass a pressure test, which doesn't mean it failed. It's possible that there were problems with valves or other system things other than like a leak in the pipe. So there seems, the question I think for a future meeting is, does the Water Sewer Commission want to spend, after having spent $40,000 or $50,000 on this to date, do we want to spend another couple of $1,000s to see, is that line credible enough, or could it be credible enough to connect?
Right. Okay. So
I-
next meeting.
It's my feeling that any proving or unproving is on the responsibility of the school or the reefs at this point.
Well, I think the school could care less, so they're probably not gonna want to spend any
Yeah.
money.
So then
I
it
think-
falls on the reefs because there's no way we're going, I in good conscience could not envision us taking on a line that cannot. You know, that we have no legitimate proof that is in good shape.
So let's bring this up in the next meeting because that's right, there is the health of the line on the school. There is the easement as well to connect to the end of those lines, the water and the sewer to the land trust easement. And then there's the installation line. So we've got 4 or 5 things just about the lines that have to fall into place to make.
That sounds good. We can bring this up then.
So just so I can report back to the board, it sounds like our letter is just on hold until such time as maybe the Reaps get their first thing done, and then either there's impetus to expand or there's impetus for the town to take over that line, which would require a new easement. But until then, the land trust can just not be concerned about this.
Well, with the exception of, can the town, the current easement includes the term assigns, which is a noun, not a verb. And it is our attorney's opinion that the town can be an assign of the Reaps under the current easement, which would suggest that we could partner and take over the line
I see.
without an additional easement.
All right,
But it would be limited by the terms of the current easement to serving phase 1. An extension past that would require
okay.
something else,
Okay.
another vehicle.
I'll mention that to Jeremy just to make sure he has the same opinion as your attorney.
So if he disagrees, he could write a letter to us and we'll forward it to our attorney for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, Gary.
Gary, where do we find out more about this path?
Be happy to talk to you about it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and maybe for the land trust, would they contemplate any connectivity up to the school? And then, of course, the wild card of the school, what their view is, because that could be a deal breaker, you're right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty much settled that they did not want to have people, just anybody walking through the playgrounds and stuff.
Right.
I think that makes
Now the
sense.
doors are locked on schools. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
So, can I ask the select board member, there's no reason for me to sit through a select board meeting to talk about easements tonight, right?
No, no.
I don't think
Okay,
so.
good.
Enjoy it.
Much as I enjoy those meetings.
We're gonna move on unless there's any other comments people feel need to be made. We will be taking this up, just focusing on water and sewer line to the Reaps property, the next meeting. Thank you. Okay. I think, I've got my bug worked out of my computer. And, so update on a fluoride pump. Exciting.
Fluoride is always exciting, trust me.
Why is fluoride
It's
so
been an
controversial?
exciting couple of weeks with fluoride.
I've had
We
a
got
few more cavities.
40 minutes worth of information to jam into.
Yeah.
15.
We're real, I mentioned that we were having some issues with our fluoride, getting it right. Through some investigation, brought the state in. The dosing pump is not working properly.
We own that, or does the state own that?
State owns it,
Okay,
so,
so when are they gonna fix their pump?
well, they're supposed to be getting us one. I gave them where we usually buy our stuff from, but they needed to get 2 other estimates. I was told they had them and they asked for the mailing address, so I'm waiting for it to come. Haven't heard back from them yet. So the long and the short, over the weekend, so what happens with the dosing pump right now is when the pump shuts off, the well pump, the dosing pump shuts off, and that's how it's been. But what happens is the dosing pump continues to bleed.
That's a problem.
You bet. So twice on the past weekend, I pumped our clear well out before I started the system because it literally was at a poison stage.
Yeah.
It was at a over 2 on fluoride. So what we are doing, what I am doing now is when I turn the pump on in the morning, I plug in the fluoride and I put the tube down into the fluoride dispenser. So when the pump is working, it seems to be working right. And the levels have been okay. But as soon as I leave for the day or go home at night, I then disconnect the fluoride to stop it from overdosing during the night.
Thank you
Is
for
that-
saving us that money as well.
Yeah, thank you for the fix, but is that fix an approved?
It is all we can do right now until we get the new pump.
Sounds like it's on the state right now.
Right now it is, yeah.
They know of this corrective action
Yes,
and they're
I-
okay with it.
yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I have
That-
emails from
okay.
Roland when he
Thank you.
came out. And yeah,
Save those emails, please.
yes, I asked Josh if he wanted them forwarded to him, but so, yeah, that's what we're doing and we're monitoring. I'm actually monitoring the fluoride levels, not only at the pump house, at the water treatment plant, but also up at the tank. And what the state seems to be thinking is that they, in the future, will change their monitoring level spot to up at the tank. Because that number has stayed more constant up there than any of the other ones, and they feel that is more consistent with what is being dosed throughout the whole village. That being said, we are still dealing with when we send a sample to the state, it tends to come back at a lower level than what our colorimeter is showing.
Mhm.
The state, from what I can understand, is they also want us to go on to a weekly testing instead of a monthly testing.
Okay.
And that's fine because they pay for it, so we just have to give them the sample. But what we're finding is our colorimeter, so if it says it's a 0.8 fluoride level, the state test will, in November, the state test came back saying it was a 0.6. What the state says is, well, just dose it so that you're dosing at a 10 and our level will be at, and I say, no. If that's what you want, you get me a colorimeter that reads
That's,
whatever your test is saying,
Yeah.
not fudging it, you know, just because it's off by 0.2.
Still 20%.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not, so we're arguing about getting a new colorimeter too. A pump, the dosing pump is about $1,400. I've asked for the pump and a complete rebuild kit for it. And that's standard. You always have the rebuild kit on the shelf. And I'm also, and which I have not, they have not said, the colorimeter is in the $2,000 range. But I feel if we're testing it here and they're testing it there, then we should be closer. I
Yeah,
mean,
that margin's too big.
yeah,
Mhm.
for me.
And it's a public health issue.
And we don't need to get into any more messes regarding fluoride.
So when you get November's water numbers, you will see a fluctuation in fluoride. But that is the reason.
And we have everything from the state in writing.
Good. All right.
It's like you've learned about this before recently.
I have.
What do we want to hit here? We've got maybe two things.
D is pretty important.
All right, update on water tank mixer installation inspection water tank.
All done.
Thank you.
It's done. They took video. Tyler was there for some of the time. He wasn't there for all of it. The tank was, their cleaning of it, they felt the tank was really good inside, looked great. All the video I saw was, there's not obvious any cracks that you can physically see in there. It really looked good. I mean, the new mixer was installed, everything, it's all up and running. I don't know what else to say,
I just. think-
other than the
so,
letter that Tyler,
Yeah, I was gonna say Tyler still hasn't had a chance to look at the video because the video's not.
we haven't
done.
got it yet.
So once we get the video, Tyler, the engineer, will review the video and then provide a more formal reply to the commission, because he also notes that the exterior is not looking as good as he'd like it to look. So he'll report back to the commission on the exterior as well as the interior, and then propose some next steps, whether that's another specialty engineer that specializes in the concrete or where Tyler thinks we should go next. But there probably will be some more follow-up.
Right, the number of cracks he's commenting on is a little alarming.
Right.
The cracks in the discussion with Tyler and I up there on the tank were the front part of the tank towards the road is on filled soil. And I mean, you can compact it all you want, but then you put 750,000 gallons of water in a tank on top of the compacted soil. And it's not like undisturbed soil.
Right.
And a quarter inch of settlement over 10 years is going to cause stress on the concrete.
Right.
And that was what I think Tyler was saying. The pillars inside the tank did not appear to have any cracks in them. Structurally, they looked good, but we're waiting for the video for that.
Okay, so, and that was part of the whole thing, is Tyler would review it. And he's
Yeah.
going to-
We just haven't, the company hasn't given me, it's in the cloud and they haven't given me the access.
Do you think that's something we should probably talk about at our next meeting? That
Yep.
seems
Yeah.
pretty
Well,
important.
I think that Tyler's got to give us a report, so definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just for a point of reference, 750,000 gallons of water is 6.2 million pounds.
Just a couple.
There's no way to dial the gravity down in that tank.
yeah,
No.
I mean, we just hope it doesn't slide down into Jericho Road.
Okay. Okay, let's see,
Meters?
I got a
Oh.
1 minute update on meters.
just a 1 minute.
Good.
1 minute
Okay,
update.
1 minute update on-
We have an agreement. I just have to sign it and send it over to the meter designer. So
Could you hold the attorney at like slingshot point or?
it took a few back and forth, but we got it done this morning, and we should be good moving on to next steps to get installation going.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay. And then I think we'll hold items C and E for the next meeting and we'll go to item G. Consideration of change in,
I'll just say C is really short. We're
Yeah.
waiting to hear back. So there's it's kind of on hold. It's in process.
right,
About grant funding, right?
Tilden Avenue,
Waterline.
Yeah.
okay.
That was Tyler.
He's gonna be the big one, for next meeting probably. But ending with G, that would make sense.
Okay, consideration of changing the date of the second water and sewer commission meeting in January due to MLK Day holiday on the third Monday of January. Anybody like to make a motion?
Morgan, I move to change the date for the second Water and Sewer Commission meeting in January. Tuesday, January 16th, 2023, in recognition of Martin Luther King Day on the commission's regularly scheduled meeting date, Monday, January 15th, 2023.
This is Aaron. I'll second that.
Morgan, I would like to amend that and
Oh.
actually have it be January 16th, 2024.
Nice catch.
Oh,
Back to the
Thanks, Dave.
future. Okay,
I will second it with the amendment stated by David.
we're moving it to 1/15/2024.
Yes.
Okay, Mike.
1/16/2024.
We're moving it to 160.
You're a digit off.
Okay, good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aaron, I.
Morgan, aye. Motion passed. Have a motion. Okay.
I'll second.
On the discussion for next meeting, could we talk about the timeline with Zenner? Just because I'm curious about that for the water
Sure.
meters,
The time,
the timeline for the water
Oh,
meters from
okay.
Zenner, can we add
Okay.
that? But now,
Meters or for the installation?
both, all of it.
Installation, yeah.
timeline, so items, timeline for water meters. Update on the, what's been repaired and replaced. Gateway expansion,
Over it.
and we've got some, and that's it. So we have a motion to adjourn, a second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you, Morgan.
Motion passes. Yeah, you bet. We have one, warrant of funding here.
All right.